When there is friction within a team, it can be really easy for someone to assume that it's because there's difficult people. Or I also know that when there is sort of like miscommunication happening or people aren't seeing eye to eye, I know that some managers will feel like maybe there's just like a generational gap that's getting in the way. But generally, in most teams, what is actually happening, it's not difficult people, it's not a generational gap. It's actually just that expectations haven't been spoken out loud. And there are these misaligned assumptions on how teams should work together. People just have expectations about things. For instance, like some people, they might look at a meeting and think that, okay, if this is a meeting with a broader group of people, then I want to ensure that I'm aligned with my team before we go in. Or people might think things like, my manager should know everything that I'm working on, so I don't need to update them. Like they should just know. These expectations, if they're unspoken, that's when friction gets created and that's when misalignment happens. I've seen this pattern so many times within my own career, but also with people that I mentor when there are just tensions that arise. People think that it's because like they can't work well with each other or that there is some kind of communication gap. People make assumptions about how work should happen, and they make assumptions that these are like known facts for other people. And it's these assumptions that let us down. So I'll give you a recent example. I was talking to a mentee the other day, and she is working with someone on her team who is a Gen Z. And I was just looking at this and I was like, oh my God, this image of the Gen Z person is like really depicting them in a certain way. That wasn't the intent. I just wanted like a young person image. And here's the manager, and here is the younger person in her team. And what I was talking to her about was that she was getting really frustrated because she was going to meetings with the expectation that her and her team member were aligned before they went into a meeting. However, her team member was expecting that when they go into a meeting with other people, that's when alignment happens. So the manager is thinking, we need to align before a meeting, but the person in this instance who was Gen Z, she's thinking actually like it's during the meeting, during meetings with other people, that's when we gain alignment. And that was causing tension and frustration. And the thing in this scenario is neither of them are wrong, right? Like no one is right or necessarily wrong in these situations. And there were just these misaligned assumptions of how they were supposed to work together. And actually, what was happening when we unpacked it a little bit more is that they never had an overt conversation about expectations on how we should work together. And it is something that I recommend to everyone. I've done it myself multiple times with my leaders, with my bosses, with my own teams, and it is such a worthwhile conversation. Because what really happens, we might think that people are acting in a certain way to, I don't know, do things to piss us off or whatever. But actually, generally, there are no bad intentions in how people work. And what causes issues is just unspoken expectations and things that we're just not aligning on because we're not speaking them out loud. And so, for instance, an expectation could be, people should just know this. People should just know that you're supposed to align with your boss before going into a meeting. People should just know that. And maybe it's true, but this expectation that people should just know it, it's not the reality. The reality is actually workplace norms aren't universal. Not everyone knows them. Not everyone's born knowing them. Not everyone enters the workforce knowing them. And so we have to just speak them out loud and have honest communication and honest conversations with each other so that we can build better working relationships. And so what I want to focus on today is it's a workshop, and you can run this in a one-on-one, you can run it with your boss, you can run it with a team, but it's a workshop that I call Our Ways of Working, and it is dedicating time to not talk about the work, but to talk about how you work together. It's so, so important to make sure that any of these misaligned assumptions are sort of raised to the surface and you can put them aside. So I'm going to go through how you do this. So the first step, if you want to run this type of workshop, is to brief your team. And actually, like, framing is everything in this, right? And look, I'm assuming that you're going to do this with your team, but you can also just brief the person one-on-one. But framing is everything. And what can happen when people see a session go in their diary called like Our Ways of Working, they might automatically assume, again, assumptions, it is like the worst thing for all of us. But anyway, they may assume that something's wrong. Like, like I'm not doing my job properly, or I've pissed them off, or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And so framing it is so important, and giving a heads up is really important. And when you do let your team know that you want to put this session in, make sure that you're focusing more on the benefits. So why it's important to do something like this versus what you want to fix. So here are some examples of like what not to focus on. Don't focus on if there's any tension in the team right now and needing to resolve it. Don't focus on some ways we are operating that are frustrating at the moment. Like, don't focus on, the negative things. Like, there are things that we have to fix. Instead, focus on the benefits of having these types of conversations and focus on creating aspiration for the team. So high-performing teams don't just focus on what they work on, but how they do it. So give them something to live up to, like give them another team to live up to. Like, high-performing teams do this, so we should do it. Also, when you're briefing it into them or explaining them that you want to run this session, say things like, we all work differently with different expectations, and an overt conversation helps us be at our best. And this is true. Like, we all operate so differently. And it's not just about our expectations. Like, we learn differently. We absorb information differently. We like feedback differently. We like recognition differently. So it's really worthwhile to have these very honest, overt conversations about how you can best work with each other so that you can build in ways of working that optimize your team. So I have written, just to kind of like help you out even more, I've written this script here that I recommend sort of sharing with your team, whether this is over email or this is like verbal. Ideally, it's verbal. And I'll kind of break down for you why I've written it in the way that I have. So I realize we spend so much time focusing on what we do, but not how we do it. So this is specific, right? One, I've used the word like, I realize we spend so much time. So using language like this, like, I realize this, it shows that you are actually reflecting on this. And it's just something that you're taking seriously because you're taking time to actually think about it. To build a strong team, we should be having overt conversations about how we work and need to make space for this. Again, using language like we need to make space for this, it just shows it's something that is a priority for you and it's something that you need to create time for. And using this language like to build a strong team, this isn't about reducing frustration. This isn't about reducing friction. This is actually just about like for us to be a really strong team, and it's giving them something to live up to. So to build a strong team, we should be having overt conversations about how we work and need to make space for this. That's on me. Like, I take recognition. I take ownership for the fact that we haven't had this session yet. That's on me, and that's my responsibility. So I'd love to set up a working session where we openly discuss the most productive ways we can work together. Again, this like is very specific language here, right? Like, you're just focusing on the benefits. I just want to figure out how we can best work together and how we can be most productive. I'll send some questions up front that will give you a gauge on what to think about. Do this and I'll go into it in the next step. We're all different people with different expectations, and having honest conversations about this is always best so we avoid making assumptions. This is the thing, like, you're just framing it to say like, we're all different people. We have different expectations. We have different ways of working. We have different, as I said, like ways that we absorb information, different ways that we want to be recognized, different ways that we want to receive feedback. And so it's just worthwhile us having an honest conversation so that we're not making any assumptions, because the assumptions really are killers of good relationships. We all make assumptions about other people every day, every minute, every day. We do it. We don't think we do, but we do. And so having that open, honest, and like mature recognition to your team to say, I just want to make sure that we're not making assumptions on each other. And so let's just have an honest conversation. You're going to frame it in a really positive light. So that's step one. Step two is you then want to, we'll book it in, make sure, like, book the session into the calendar, but then 48 hours in advance, I want you to send questions to your team or to your boss or to whoever it is that you're having this session with, so that they have time to ponder on them. At least give them 24 hours, because you want to give them a night to sleep on it and think about it. But ideally you give them 48 hours just so they know what to expect, particularly if this is the first time that you're running anything like this. And I've given you sort of like 4 basic broad questions here, and I like to keep it broad for these team sessions or these working sessions. And I also like to keep the questions minimal, because if you overwhelm people, they're going to feel overwhelmed. They're going to feel stressed. They're not going to answer that in their best way. So the 4 questions that I recommend are: when are you at your best at work? So explain the situations when you thrive. What do you need to create them? And if people need more than that. So say to them things like, when do you find that you are the most effective in your job? Is it like, are you working from home? Do you have headphones in? Is it when you are in the office? Is it when you have access to certain people? Like, what is it that you need? What causes the most stress or worry for you at work? And again, this one's important, right? Like you need to frame it in the way of what causes the most stress for you or what causes the most frustration for you, rather than when have you been frustrated in the past by someone. You don't want to point it at someone or point it at a situation. You just want to understand what causes stress and frustration for you. What do you need from your team leads or teammates to operate at your best? And ask them here to be honest and open. Now, this isn't about like pointing fingers, it's just about like giving open, honest feedback so that people understand, hey, actually, it would really help me out if you did XYZ. And also ask them, how do you like to receive recognition? This is a big one. Some people love public praise. Some people hate it. Some people would just prefer like a Slack message, a private Slack message, or a private email that's well written and honest. So learn that about your team and just ask them that direct question. Then your third step is to just hold the workshop. So I mentioned to book it in the calendars. Obviously, it's step 2. If you're doing this in a team setting, generally you might need, depending on how big your team is, you might need about 90 minutes for this. If this is just a one-on-one, you'll only need about 30 minutes. But so book in the time that you need based on the number of people that you have. And if you're running this as a team, I recommend splitting the workshop into 2 parts in this way. You want to have 60 minutes, roughly 60 minutes for individual sharing, and then 30 minutes for creating shared commitments to each other. So in your individual sharing, your expectation should be, and you would put this in the note, right? Like you would put this in the email invite, but your expectation is that everyone's coming to that session with some answers to your questions. And at the beginning of the session, just give them all a few minutes to capture on individual post-it notes their answers to the questions. So if they've got one post-it note per answer, and you can do it on a Miro board or whatever you use online, but get them to sort of write it down. And then you want to give each individual time to share. It might be nerve-wracking for the first person to go. So ask a leader in your team to do it, or you can do it yourself. Ideally, though, if you're the team lead, don't go first. Ask someone else to go first, because it sets a different tone. And but if it might need to be someone with a bit more confidence in your team. So maybe someone who's a bit more senior in your team. So give each individual about 5 minutes to share all of their post-its and just like talk through them, and make it a safe space. Make sure it's sort of like everyone's feeling encouraged to share, like, hey, this is really helpful for me. This isn't. This is when I'm stressed. This isn't. Like, make sure they feel really encouraged. So when they're saying things like nod, smile, be like, oh, do you know what? That actually makes sense. Like, just give them some encouraging feedback. As they're going through them, group them into themes as people are talking about them. So again, either this is like in a room or on a Miro board, whatever you're using, but just like start to kind of group them into themes that are coming up in your head as people are talking through them. And themes could be things like, it could be specific to when they're receiving certain briefs for work, or it could be specific to something like quiet time or needing reflection time, whatever. You'll start to theme them, right? Because people will have similar things. So start to kind of theme them up as people are going through. And that's the first part. And that's actually very, very helpful, because what it does is it helps people get out on the table. When do I work at my best? And what do I need from all of you? And when am I at my worst? And what do I want to try and like prevent from happening? Once you've done that, this next bit is quite important, because you want to come out of that session with clear actions and commitments that you make to each other. So what I recommend is that you spend roughly maybe 15 to 20 minutes ideating on proposed commitments. So basically, you'll have all of these themes up here where you've got sort of like a theme on like how we should be briefing each other, or how we should be creating quiet time, or how we need to create time so people can reflect on pieces of work before giving feedback. You'll have these different themes. Based on that, you then want to create different proposed commitments for each other. So you'll ask the question, based on all of our individual needs that we have just like spoken through, what group promises can we make to each other that ensure that we operate most effectively? And people might struggle with this at the start, so give them some ideas. So you can say things like, we promise to only set meetings with clear objectives and agendas. Let's say that someone says, I get really, work is really frustrating for me when I spend all day in meetings and I feel like we're not getting anything done, or I spend all day in meetings that I'm not even sure I need to go to. Let's say that's a frustration. Then you as a team, you can make the commitment to each other to say, okay, let's make sure that for every meeting that we set, we have a clear objective, we have a clear agenda, so people know if they need to be there or not. That's a very easy promise to make and something that is very clear and tangible to follow through on. Another one might be, we promise to pre-align on decisions before broader meetings. So this is, again, similar to the example that my mentee was facing. If you are finding that you are you're going into a meeting thinking like, okay, we're pre-aligned and it's all good, and then something shifts in that meeting and you're finding that there is tension there because of it, you may have a commitment to each other to say, do you know what, before big meetings with certain stakeholders, we promise to pre-align on certain decisions and go in there as a team. Another one could be, we promise to share weekly project updates within the team. So this one came out for me years and years ago. I remember my GM at the time, they would feel stressed if they didn't know what the project updates were and what was happening. And of course they wouldn't know everything because they're across so many different people. And I can attest to that now. Like you have so much going on in your world when you're in senior leadership. And what we therefore as a team committed to was just, here's a weekly update on, here are the big focus areas of this week and the big focus areas of next week. And that just really resolved a lot of the stress that leader was feeling. One of the things to note, and this is a question that I get asked, but like leaders will say, okay, well, if we're building these commitments together, like how can I push what I need on my team in those moments? And the answer is yes, like you absolutely can, as long as you're being reasonable. As the leader, it is okay for you to ask for certain commitments from your team. So I'll give you some examples. If, for instance, your team is presenting to C-suite or senior leadership or whatever it is, and you want to make sure that whatever is presented in the best light, it is very okay for you to set the expectation of, anytime we are going to senior leadership, I need to see that 48 hours in advance. That is okay for you to ask. That is okay for you to set, because you're setting that expectation up front. So don't feel that you have to steer away from guiding or being clear on some of the commitments that you also require from your team. You as a leader, that's your role and that's your job, and it's okay to set them. You're not micromanaging, you're not being demanding, you're simply creating guardrails that your team need to operate within to be effective. Now, as a reminder, this framework works for full teams or one-on-ones. Like if you're going to do it one-on-one, just send the questions up front to your boss or to your team member and just say, hey, would love to have a discussion about this in our next one-on-one. The other thing that I would recommend, if you are doing this one-on-one, you can get quite detailed then in your questions. And these, maybe you don't need to send these up front, but you can talk them through with them in person. And you can ask them things like, what's the best way for me to brief you on something? Like, this is something that like, I'm not always great at. I'm not great with briefing my team. And so learning this about what they need from me, what are the specifics that they need from me? Do they need it in writing? Do they need a meeting? Do they need a phone call? What do they need from me? Like, having that conversation is always very, very beneficial. Or you can ask them things like, how do you best like to communicate? Phone, Slack, email. Some people, Slack stresses them out. Some people need email so that they've got things documented well. Like, just have this conversation. You may not be able to follow through on it every time, but at least you know what their preference is, and at least you can also mention what yours is. What is the best way for me to chase you up for something urgent? Again, like, you need to have this conversation to go, okay, what's the urgent line? Because maybe you don't have your notifications turned on. Maybe your phone's not with you at all times. But if I need something urgently, what's the best way that I should chase you up for it? How do you prefer to receive feedback? Like, again, another good one to work through and just to know, what do they actually need from you? How are they best going to receive it? And you can ask them very broadly as well, like, what do you need from me? Like, what is it that you need from me? Particularly if you're their leader, this is an excellent question to ask. Now, the last thing that you might ask or be thinking is, okay, so when should I hold these? Like, really, whenever is the answer. But if you've got a new team, if you are managing people for the first time, if you are you've been managing them for a while and you've never run a session like this, just do it. Just book it in. If you've got a new boss, you can book it in with them. Just be like, hey, want to have a discussion about our ways of working. I want to make sure that we are operating in a way that is most effective. And also, like, do them on a quarterly cadence, like, have refreshes, like, just do a check in. Are we working well together? Are there frustrations? What can I do to support you? Like, just have these overt conversations because they always, always help. So that's it for today. If you're currently leading a team and you're trying to work through things like this, like team dynamics, managing feedback, managing friction within a team, or just creating a really great team environment, this is the type of thing that I work with leaders on in my Career Accelerator program, and the details of that are below. And if you liked this video, which is all about sort of like the unspoken rules of work, I guarantee you'll find this other video really interesting. This talks about the unspoken rules of communicating to senior leadership and managing them. So I guarantee you'll learn something. So check it out.